Here is the full speech for the title, "The American Dream Was Never Meant to Be a Gated Privilege Reserved for Those Born into Wealth, Protected by Lobbyists, and Insulated by Power. It was envisioned as a promise, not a prize. A promise that through hard work, decency, and determination, a person could rise, provide for their family, and contribute to a nation that respected them in return. But somewhere along the way, that dream was hijacked. Hijacked by corporate greed, by unchecked political influence, by a system that rewards manipulation over merit. Today, too many young people graduate into debt instead of opportunity. Too many families work multiple jobs and still fall short on rent. Too many rural towns are forgotten the moment their industries collapse, and through it all, the few at the top grow richer, not because they work harder, but because the system works only for them. When billionaires are paying less in taxes than nurses and teachers, when a CEO makes more in a single day than their workers make in a year, when housing becomes a commodity instead of a human right, then we must ask ourselves, whose dream is this, really? Because the America we were taught to believe in, the one where effort was enough, where fairness was foundational, doesn't live behind velvet ropes and corporate boardroom doors. It lives in the hands of small business owners trying to survive inflation. It lives in the hearts of immigrant families chasing stability. It lives in single mothers balancing night shifts and homework. It lives in every citizen who still believes that liberty must include equity, that success should not depend on your ZAP code, your last name, or your inheritance. Democracy is built on the radical idea that every voice counts, that every vote carries weight, and that power is derived from the governed, not purchased by the privileged. But when the reins of government are pulled not by the people, but by a handful of billionaires and multinational interests, we are no longer functioning as a democracy. We are living under the shadow of oligarchy. This isn't theoretical, it's not just an academic distinction. It's visible in the policies that prioritize corporate subsidies over school lunches, tax loopholes over infrastructure, shareholder returns over clean air and water. It's in the way legislation is drafted. Not in public forums, but in private meetings, behind closed doors, shaped by lobbyists with checkbooks instead of citizens with concerns. When campaigns cost millions to run, only the wealthy or the well-connected can afford to play the game. When media giants filter truth through the lens of profit, the people are not informed, they are manipulated. When the courts tilt in favor of donors, not the Constitution, justice is no longer blind, it's bought. And make no mistake, oligarchy doesn't just steal policy, it steals hope. It convinces citizens that their voices don't matter, that change is impossible, that fighting back is futile. It replaces civic engagement with cynicism, replacing ballots with burnout. But that is not the republic we inherited, and it is not the future we are willing to accept, because democracy dies not all at once, but in pieces. Every time we tolerate corruption, every time we stay silent in the face of rigged systems, every time we... History doesn't remember tyrants for their titles, it remembers people for their courage, because no matter how vast the wealth, how high the office, or how firm the grip of control may seem, the power of the people has always outlasted the people in power. Those in power build walls, literal and metaphorical, to keep people divided, distracted, and discouraged. But unity is the one force they can't regulate, can't suppress, and can't silence when it ignites in the hearts of ordinary citizens. That's because real power does not flow from marble halls or executive desks. It flows from the kitchen tables, the factory floors, the picket lines, the classrooms, the crowded church basements, and the city blocks where people still believe in something greater than themselves. When the people rise, systems shake. When the people speak, regimes rethink. And when the people organize, oligarchs lose sleep. This is why grassroots movements are treated as threats. This is why voter suppression exists. This is why protest is policed more aggressively than corruption. Because the moment the people recognize their collective power, the illusion of elite control begins to crumble. Every movement that ever shaped history, from the abolitionists to the suffragists, from civil rights to labor rights, was not led by billionaires. It was fueled by people who had nothing to gain but everything to defend. People who stood when it was dangerous, people who spoke when it was costly, people who refused to wait for permission to demand justice. And the truth is, there is more strength in 10 honest voices than in 10,000 empty promises from those who have forgotten who they serve. Those in high office may sign the laws, but the people write the future, and the future does not belong to those who. The Constitution guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what does liberty mean if the air we breathe poisons our lungs? What does life mean if the water we drink sickens our children? And what happiness is left to pursue when wildfires consume homes, floods erase neighborhoods, and heat waves kill the most vulnerable before dawn breaks? Environmental justice isn't a side issue. It isn't a luxury for activists or a pet project for politicians during election season. It is the foundation of all other freedoms, because no freedom can survive on a dying planet. Too often, those who speak the loudest about liberty turn silent when corporations bulldoze sacred lands, contaminate drinking water in forgotten zip codes, or drill for profit in lands meant to be preserved for generations unborn. But let's be clear, the right to a livable planet is not radical, it is moral, it is constitutional, it is essential to every other right we claim to protect. Environmental injustice doesn't affect everyone equally. It targets the poor, the marginalized, the voiceless. You won't find toxic waste dumps in wealthy suburbs. You won't see pipelines snaking through private golf resorts. No, these violations of creation and of conscience occur where communities lack the political power to fight back. This is not by accident, it is by design. When the government allows corporate polluters to destroy ecosystems without accountability, it violates not only public trust, it breaches its constitutional duty to safeguard the general welfare. When children grow up next to chemical plants and develop illnesses they can't pronounce, we have failed, not only scientifically, but spiritually. And when leaders dismiss climate change as a debate instead of confronting it as the emergency it is, they are abandoning the very people they were elected to protect. The truth is, stewardship is not just a faith-based value, it is a civic mandate. A nation that desecrates its own environment desecrates its future, because clean air is not partisan, safe water is not controversial, and biodiversity, once lost, cannot be bought back at any price. We are not separate from the earth, we are of it. Our health, our economy, our national security, and our posterity are all tied to how we care for the natural world. If we fail to protect it, we do not simply lose landscapes, we lose lives. We lose trust. We lose time that we cannot get back, and the longer we delay bold, righteous action, the more deeply injustice takes root, not just in the soil, but in our systems, in our courts, in our policies, and in our consciences. Because justice that does not include the environment is justice that leaves millions behind. This struggle we're engaged in, it's not just about laws, parties, or elections. It's not confined to legislative chambers or ballot boxes. No, this fight runs deeper than politics. It is spiritual, because when human dignity is trampled under corporate greed, when truth is manipulated for profit, when suffering becomes normalized in the name of economic growth, we're not simply debating policy, we are confronting a crisis of the soul. We are not just deciding what kind of government we want, we are deciding what kind of people we are. Do we measure our nation's greatness by the strength of its character or the size of its stock market? Do we define leadership by moral courage or by how well it serves the interests of the highest bidder? Do we protect the vulnerable or exploit them when no one's watching? These are spiritual questions. Every act of injustice, every child locked in poverty, every voice silenced by money, every sacred land sold to the highest bidder, leaves a stain not just on our policies, but on our collective conscience. Because deep down we all know that what we tolerate in silence becomes what we are complicit in, and it is not enough to say we care. Compassion without conviction is a decoration, not a duty. Morality without action is not morality at all. It is apathy in disguise. This fight demands more than votes. It demands vision. It demands we live by a higher calling than comfort or convenience. It demands we wrestle with our own indifference, with our temptation to turn away, with our fear of what standing up might cost us. Because sometimes doing the right thing won't make you popular, but it will make you whole. There comes a moment in every generation when neutrality becomes betrayal, not just of country, but of conscience. And in this moment, we are being asked not just what side we're on, but what spirit leaves within us, the kind of spirit that doesn't back down when challenged, the kind of spirit that doesn't sell out when pressured, the kind of spirit that speaks the truth even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unsafe. This is the work of transformation, not just of systems, but of hearts. It's not about tearing down for the sake of destruction, but building something honest, something just, something sacred in its commitment to human dignity. Because what we're facing is not just a political corruption, it's a spiritual vacancy, a loss of empathy, of shared purpose, of humility in the face of something greater than ourselves. And until we restore that center, until we remember that liberty without love is empty, that freedom without justice is hypocrisy, and that power without purpose is poison, we will continue to repeat the same cycles, the same suffering, the same. Hope is not wishful thinking. It's not a soft emotion reserved for speeches or slogans. Real hope, radical, defiant hope, is a force. It moves, it disrupts, it builds, it acts. Hope is not sitting still waiting for permission. It's not politely asking systems of power to fix themselves. It's not optimism without cost. No, hope is rolling up your sleeves while your hands are still shaking. It's showing up even when you're tired. It's raising your voice even when you're scared. It's continuing to believe in people, even when those in power have let you down again and again. The truth is, hopelessness is not just an emotion, it's a strategy used by those who benefit from your silence, from your surrender. Because if they can convince you that nothing will ever change, that the system is too big, too broken, too rigged to resist, then they win by default. They don't have to fight you if you've already talked yourself out of fighting back. But history wasn't written by the comfortable. It was written by the bold, and every breakthrough, every moment when injustice was interrupted and dignity was restored, began with people who refused to confuse quiet with peace, who refused to mistake delay for defeat, who understood that hope is not soft, it is steel in the spine. Hope is Harriet Tubman leading the way through darkness with no guarantee of survival. Hope is workers striking for fair wages when the factory owners threatened their families. Hope is indigenous water protectors standing in freezing rivers because they know the next generation is watching. Hope is every citizen who walks into a voting booth, organizes a march, confronts a lie, tells their truth, and dares to believe that the world doesn't have to stay the way it is. It's not blind, it sees all the brokenness and still chooses to build. It's not naive, it knows the cost and still chooses to pay it. It's not waiting for someone else, it says, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Because the call of our time is not to sit on the sidelines of history and hope things get better. The call is to become the authors of a better future, not just with words, but with actions, not just with applause, but with sacrifice, not just with intention, but with impact. Hope that doesn't move is not hope, it's decoration. Hope that doesn't challenge the status quo is not hope, it's complicity. Hope that does not demand justice, does not stir conscience, does not march in the direction of transformation, is not hope at all.